Welcome to the Retro Adventurers, a podcast about classic text-adventure games. I'm Nick Moffat, and I'm starting to adventure in retro more professionally these days, as you'll hear. Today we have another Chatisode for you. As the year 2025 comes to a close, we invited all of our previous guests to join us for casual discussion. We left multiple slots open for their convenience and ended up recording 3 sessions. One of these sessions contained 3 hosts along with Ron Martinez, which went into such depth that you can look forward to that as a standalone episode in 2026. For part 1 of this episode, Jason Compton and I met with Robin Raymond, whom you met in episode 9, Tim Gilberts, who has joined us in episodes 5, 13, 17, and 25, Scott Adams from episodes 3 and 13, Andrew Plotkin, who appeared in episode 28 and whose game Inhumane we reviewed in episode 27, and Dave Velociraptor, Jason's co-host on This Week in Retro, who appeared in episode 29. So, unless you're in the Southern Hemisphere, build the fire a little higher and settle in for part 1 of the 2025 year-end fireside chat.
Welcome to the Retro Adventurers. This is our second annual year-end Chatisode. We put out the bat signal to everybody who's been on the show in the past and asked them to join us for a couple of sessions, try to make it as feasible as we can for our guests around the world. And for this first session, you've got me, you've got Jason Compton here again. Nick Moffat, one of our regulars, is on. Hey, Nick, how are the holidays treating you so far?
Been great so far. How have you been?
I'm doing pretty good. And I'm just admitting another guest, and while he comes online, I will mention we have one of our recent guest players. We've got Dave from This Week in Retro. Dave, you were on earlier in the year taking a look at Robots of Dawn with us. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that episode. I am the least qualified to be here of anyone by quite some distance, so I'm not sure what I'll contribute, but my heart is there.
And we've got Robin Raymond. Robin was on last year talking about Kingdom of the Seven. I blanked on it again, Robin. Kingdom of the Seven Stones. 7 Stones. I felt pretty confident about it. And that was a C64 game which takes advantage of extra hardware. Now that the Commodore 64 Ultimate is reaching people's trees and so forth, are you getting any uptick in interest in that game?
It's kind of petered out because most of the people have already heard about it last year now. Okay. So I'm hoping that with the renewed interest in the C64, we'll get a bit of an uptick.
Yeah, because that really is, it takes advantage of the hardware that's kind of a default feature of that. So I really hope that you get some renewed interest in that. And Andrew Plotkin, sorry, Dave?
I'll buy one.
Nice. Excellent. One sale on this show already. Fantastic.
Andrew Plotkin is here. Andrew joined us for one of our more popular episodes of this year, the interview, and we have an episode in the can where he comes back to play Infidel with us. So that's going to be coming out early next year. Andrew, welcome back. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Have the podcast interviews been coming in fast and furious since our standout episode?
No, you're asking me.
I'm asking you, but it was an idle, silly question. And 2 of our very early guests have also just jumped on while I was doing introductions with the adventure logo and the outline of the United States behind him is Scott Adams. Scott, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here. I'm probably only going to attend for maybe 15 minutes or so. I've got a busy schedule, but I didn't want to miss this.
That's excellent. And that means that because we were just talking about you before you joined, so I'm going to loop right back to that after introducing our last guest that signed on, Tim Gilberts. Tim has joined us for both interviews and magazine episodes. We've got an episode in the can where we play a couple of classic games that's awaiting release. And of course, Tim from Gilsoft, known for the Quill, which and other creation systems, which are responsible for literally well over 1,000 games. So Tim, welcome back.
Thanks very much. Nice, good to be here. Wouldn't have missed it for the world, Jason. So there's such luminaries of the industry around, look, including Dave.
Yeah.
No.
So hearing that Scott has a little bit of time pressure. Nick, yes, we were just talking about that. Why don't you ask our guest publisher that question that we've been dying to get answered?
All right, Scott. So Jason and I we just released actually the episode on the Adventure International Gremlins game. And we had to ask, we don't remember ever seeing that in the United States. It's clearly a very British production. Is there a deeper story behind this?
To be totally honest, I had absolutely nothing to do with it. If it was released, it would have been by AI UK. I'm not sure if that's the case. If it was, then it wasn't under my licensing. It would have been something totally separate and different. So absolutely no idea why it never made it to the States.
Yeah, it was branded AI UK, and Howarth was credited as the author. But we were wondering, because it was around the time, and we've talked about your Marvel license. So was this something that, it sounds like you had no involvement with Warner Brothers and making that connection with Howarth, but you have no idea how that came together?
I did not.
It's, curiouser and curiouser, because of course Atari Soft had the game license in the US, and as did others. And so it's astonishing to us that AI UK managed to get the license in the UK for this game. And there's no greater story out there that we can find.
And obviously it was limited that they couldn't present it in the US.
It has that feel, because all of the platforms that the AI UK game were for were very clearly the ones that sold in the UK. Like there is no Apple II edition, for example, which is kind of the dead giveaway. If there is an Amstrad version but not an Apple version, you kind of know what market you're catering to.
So Scott, may I ask, have you ever played it?
No, I have not.
Oh wow.
Okay. Well, as we're recording, there's still time to add it to your Christmas festivities. It is a
New Year's resolutions.
It does kind of set the tone if you do buy into Gremlins being a Christmas film. That Gremlins works out as a Christmas game.
Oh, sorry, I'm not much help here.
So there was recent news in both Infocom, Activision, finally acknowledging the de facto open source nature of Zork and kind of blessing it themselves. And Andrew, I don't know if you saw, but we quoted heavily from your kind of analysis of that situation. And right around that same time, also more, I guess, the Level 9 archive became even more open source. So these are, for those of us who pay attention to this classic tech, even though these platforms have already been documented and understood, it's nice, I guess, having the official freedom, I guess. So I'll throw this to Andrew, but really anybody here, does this kind of change anything for you in terms of what you're planning to do with either the A machine or the Z machine formats going forward? Or Andrew, you had sort of mentioned now the visible Zorker might be easier to get it into a museum or something like that. But what does this open up for us?
Well, as I said in my post, it doesn't really affect me because, I was already a scofflaw and I did whatever I wanted with the stuff. As you say, it's the museums and the libraries and the schools and the classrooms that now have the ability to pick the stuff up and do something with it without having to run it through institutional lawyers. It actually does. I didn't require permission to do this, but I was motivated to do it anyway. I'm going to spend the next week doing the Visible Zorker 2.
Awesome.
And analyzing the code and getting up a version of that with all the source code and the links and the live data and everything. I'm doing that for fun. It's not something that I was like, I never wrote down, I'm going to wait until this material is open source and then tackle it. What I actually wrote down was, I'm never going to tackle it. It's too much work. No one's really interested. But and I decided that I was interested in the hell with it.
How a lot of good stuff happens.
Yeah, once enough time's passed for everyone to not worry too much about everything else they've done, we can just put it out there. But the main problem, I think, is wondering sometimes what you put in the source 40 years ago unless you read it all the way through. So most people, certainly why we don't open source a lot of the stuff we've got is more, I just haven't had time to look through it and see what is there and isn't. So I think it takes a lot of brave to just dump everything you've ever done.
Well, that's what I was going to ask next, Tim. Yeah, is are people starting to knock at the door and say wait a minute, can we get the source to Dad or can we get the core?
We do, and in fact, Uto has copies of the source. I've made sure he's got copies. He's been asking for some more versions of the various interpreters, and I've always supplied him with anything he needs. It's not It's just the fact that I'm not aware of anything that's in the code that's untoward, but he gets a chance to look at it and keeps it up to date and is an enthusiast, and that's great, and there's at least a copy of it out there, so that it is preserved with him as well, which is good. So eventually I'll just dump it on a GitHub somewhere. So.
And Robin, we talked about the audience side of your game. Are you getting any inquiries from other authors? Because you did spin up your own system rather than using one of the popular ones out there. Are you finding that people are contacting you, talking about asking you how you did it, or wanting to learn more from your experience as a creator and publisher?
I had a few inquiries, which was kind of interesting, but mostly it was just more on the technical side, like how did you do the graphics or something like that, which I was actually surprised about. They weren't inquiring, why I did this other path or what I was going to do about it. But yeah, so no, not a lot in that front.
So I'm coming in late on this. You did develop your own game system here, is what you're talking about?
Yeah, I was just curious, given the limitations, how difficult it would be to make the game. And I know for yours, Scott, that you had like a 99 limit on the number of text responses, which I can't even fathom how you managed to squeeze everything in there. It boggles my mind how you did that. Whereas I had a cartridge with 1 megabit rather to work with. And you can imagine how much text you could have squeezed if you had access to that much memory on a C64. So kudos to you. I'm extremely impressed with what you did on that system.
The mother of invention is necessity, they say. As a side note, just to Jason, have you ever interviewed or heard Chris Radford, who did Forgotten Nightmare? The reason I bring this up is he's developed a new system, which I'm very impressed with, for writing new games that look like old ones. And he took a different tact on adventure, and I love his interface. He does all his adventure games with only 16 verbs, and they're fixed.
Okay, Chris Radford.
So when you're talking about Chris Radford, I can put you in touch with him if interested.
Very appreciated. Thank you.
This is learning from the kind of the later LucasArts things, kind of casting back into text adventures and say, well, simplify the verbs and remove the frustration.
Yeah.
Yes, it is amazing. He also put an auto mapping system in his game too. So as you discover regions, it gives you the map. And the two biggest frustrations to players kind of disappear there. And yet it's still a very much text-based game. One of his, quote, verbs is kind of a cheat because it says use. That's the verb. So like use hammer on tree, that sort of thing. So it opens up a more complex idea. But to do it in 16 verbs, at first time I saw it, I went, why didn't I think of this? This is genius.
I once started to spec out a system which would have a very small set of verbs, like maybe 4 or 5.
That's even smaller.
But rather than typing commands, you would you would drag and drop verbs and objects, and then you could add more, like direct objects. So nice. The flexibility of the system becomes not joining the verb and the noun, which is that's what you're trying to do, but rather which tools you join into the command.
I like that, Andrew. That's very good.
I didn't get very far with it. It's always, I feel like it's a thing that I ought to come back to because it takes a completely different approach because it doesn't try to push players through the typing things into a parser.
Yes.
And yet it should still have the same number of axes of freedom.
And you're getting rid of the guess the word problem that so many adventures have. That sounds, even though you're doing this other thing for fun, this one sounds like something you may want to percolate up close to the top of your list, because I think it'd be a blessing to a lot of people to see such a system.
Well, thank you for saying that. I will keep it in mind as I struggle with the job and the contracting work and all the other hideous demands on my time.
Yeah, juggling a lot of things. I can appreciate that. I'm sure we all can.
I think we can all say that. There's never enough time to do what you want, but never enough time to do what you have to do. And the two together mean it's never enough time.
I thought it was the other way around. Too much time, too little to do. Wait, scratch that. Reverse it.
Yeah, that's your dreams at night, Scott, isn't it? About what you'll achieve tomorrow morning. It's- but talking on this sort of verb noun and limiting the view is the Swan system we did for Fergus McNeil, which he used to write good grief, Mind Fighter and a few others which are sort of lost to time. But I'm in the middle of sort of looking to recover that now. I've been chatting to Fergus and a few other to try and cover the disc for that. But that had a graphical, it used a GUI interface that was icon driven, and that was intended to just generate verbs and nouns. So in actual fact, when you look at the GUI interface, it's just when you click on the save button, it just generates a save noun. So you could have used it for a limited noun or a limited verb interface as well, because you could have multiple windows of graphics. He never used it that way, but the original conception was it was just a user interface that you could put a limited set in and then generate them both from the GUI or from the command line. So that was certainly the way he was thinking, I think, of going longer term, was that more limited interface that came. It was becoming popular at the time, wasn't it? I mean, when we do this, 87, something like that. So that sort of limited interface was definitely becoming popular. I think it is popular with people, isn't it? I mean, a lot of Quill games only had half a dozen verbs in them because people weren't really providing a lot of verbs other than the ones that we provided as standard, maybe a handful. But that use method, I think, proves a game if it's about what it is, isn't it? If it's about what you're doing, then you don't need a lot of verbs, do you? Because you know in your mind what you want to achieve. You shouldn't really be making people have to find do I have to tie the rope? Do I have to lift the rope? It's just, that's adding to people's, it's a block for them. So I've always thought that.
It's an unfair block.
Yeah, exactly. Because people know what they want to do. Give them loads of synonyms, so they know what they're trying to achieve.
Well, we haven't gotten to this game yet, but I think I've mentioned it on a few occasions. The Nine Princes in Amber game, which, because of the source material, had an elaborate text-based fencing simulator in it, but also the best way to get through the fight was actually just a one-word command that actually kind of cheated your way through the fight. Like it was appropriate to the character, but also avoided, despite them including a separate slip of paper to tell you essentially here are the basics of fencing and here's how to parse it. The actual way to get through the fight is to simply be unsportsmanlike. Yeah. So like I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it. The more, go ahead.
I was thinking Harrison Ford in the Ninja Knife Fighter, and he pulls out his gun.
Yeah.
Or Lara Croft with the complexity in the butterfly showing you the alternate route rather than having complexity. So it's the same idea, isn't it? There's usually a different way to achieve something. You can slog your way through it, or just get on with it.
Of course, if you're talking about limited verb sets and games with strong fencing subsystems in them, I think, of course, of Monkey Island, which had very few verbs in the end. However, you did end up doing a lot, as Andrew suggested, by combining objects as well, which was sort of implicit how you were combining them.
So Dave, go ahead, Rob.
Sorry, I was curious from Scott how he handled giving away too many hints with nouns and verbs. So if people were to guess a noun or verb, you could give a generic error saying, don't understand what you're saying versus I do understand what you're saying, but you can't do that. Like, how did you handle that in your games?
Are you talking about technically or what the game did?
No, how did you handle it more logically in terms of the user to not give away clues in your game?
I did have very specific commands. It would say either I can't do that yet, which meant that it understood the combination, but the triggers weren't met. Or I had the I don't understand the word. They give me a verb that isn't in the list. So that was a direct shutout. So, and then if they did something with a verb and I thought, okay, yeah, that's generally what they want to do. Like they say, look at the light bulb at the ceiling. I would just take it as a general room look and describe the whole room again. So different layers, different levels. My system, which is open, of course, very much open source now, was that a verb had to match. And once the verb matched, then there was either a specific noun that had to match with its synonyms, or any noun would match. So for, let's say, a look command, I'd have a bunch of look object 1, look object 2, look object 3, and then at the bottom would be a look any. So it would all trickle down and, well, it didn't meet any of these, so we'll just do everything.
And
Yeah, I
sometimes you
think
needed a
there's-
verb like hyperventilate, and
Yeah,
I
good
think
luck
there was.
figuring
I
that
think there
one
was an interview in the Get Lamp material, maybe not in the actual documentary, of someone describing playing an Adventure International game and inferring through the error messages that some red object or blue object did exist, and he could find it later on. He just needed to do this one more step, and that was the thing that unlocked the final point for him. So I think Robin's question is definitely an interesting one.
You know that if you solve a game that way, I think it's just as rewarding.
Oh, it really is.
Hey,
I
it's
mean,
a logic puzzle one way or the other. You're getting to the solution.
You're also becoming familiar with the world, Scott. I mean, the world has different things happening in it. You're learning the vocabulary of the world you're in.
Playtesters were my biggest resource for writing a game, because I'd write a game 20% all by myself, and then at 20% I'd start bringing in playtesters, and they would do things, and I'd go, "Wow, I didn't think of that, but I'm going to respond when the player does this in the future and give them this path." And it was wonderful. So it was a multi-group effort, even though it wasn't planned to be originally. Playtesters are extremely helpful.
So Dave is on, and for those of you who watch This Week in Retro, Dave is in front of his familiar backdrop of lots and lots and lots of boxed games. And Dave, honestly, usually by this point in the proceedings, you'll have held up a game box or two of something either that you've acquired recently or that's thematically on point. So what do you have for us?
Yes,
Funny you
yes.
should mention that, he says.
Kind of your brand.
Here's one.
Oceanus
okay.
Prime. Yes, the Rune of Oceanus Prime, one of the newer games.
I haven't got to that yet. So I've got that and I've got this. And I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. I've just got the Commodore 64U. It came in the other day. Delighted with it, by the way. Absolutely delighted with it. And I had in my head the idea that there was oh, for goodness sake, sorry. That's my grocery delivery. I do have to go. I'll be back. I'm back shortly. I'm terribly sorry, Jason.
What did Dave have in
now
mind?
you're making me hungry, which reminds me, I need to also beg out, because I need to run and start doing some errands too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for blessing us with that amazing Christmas jumper, which none of us managed to bother showing up in.
And may I say, it's lovely to meet you. We haven't run into each other before, but of course, I played all the games back in the day.
Thank you so much for joining us, Scott. Please, obviously, anytime you want to come and drop some more wisdom on us, please let us know.
Oh, I enjoy it. Whenever you do these get-togethers, let me know, and I will do my best to try to join. And offline, I'll go ahead and give you Chris Radford's information, because I think you'd make a fascinating interview for you.
Very, very much. Thank you. Yeah, we keep learning that there's way more to discover in the world of retro adventures than just the kind of few dozen games everybody can rattle off the top of their head.
Before I go, I want to wish everybody happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. And most importantly, a big blessing on all your families in this upcoming new year, and for all those who are listening. God bless, and hope to see you soon.
Thanks so much, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. Same to you.
Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas.
Fun.
Merry Christmas.
Well, now that the gentleman's gone, now we can really get down to the gritty stuff. What are you holding up, Tim?
It's a Christmas decoration I had it hanging from my mic.
Okay, is it the dragon logo?
Yeah, it is the dragon logo. Yes, with some Christmas decorations around it and a little bit of silver tags. And picked it up at the Dragon Meet last year, so I thought I'd bring it back out and hang it on the microphone.
That's
cool.
good.
It's been a little while since we played a dragon game. Go ahead, Nick.
I picked up the only decoration I realized I had, which is this wonderful brass lantern badge. Jason, I thought you might be the person who might be first to notice what this is from.
I maybe I'm just not getting enough resolution on it.
Here, let me just very quickly pop it off, and
let's see.
Oh, now the backing has fallen to the floor, and
I see the lantern, but I don't recognize what it's from. I'm sorry.
This is official Hades Town merch.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. So my daughter had it, and she gave me her cork board, which I'm using to sort of sound baffle this room a bit. Yeah. And so I thought that was about appropriate for tonight.
Well, I thought it might have been from the Lantern system. So
unexpected crossover.
Has there been ever any merch for text adventure games? I'm not talking like Gremlins, which obviously had merch due to the popularity of the movie, but I'm just talking about text adventure games itself.
Well, all the Infocom feelies.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there was a period when there were companies that tried to start up around 2000, a little after, trying to be just the feelies for the games you got for free online. People were exploring different business models, that kind of thing in those days. I can't remember what that company was called, but there were a few games that tried distributing tchotchkes through there.
Yeah. Emily Short had it wasn't so much a company as like a database of places you could get toys like that, but the rate of people using it were just too low. Companies went out of business faster than people wrote games.
Yeah, Infocom surely, or maybe Zork User Group or both. They must have done like T-shirts and stuff like that, didn't they?
I mean, still have a Zork Users, like a New Zork Times T-shirt, ancient, worn, doesn't fit me anymore, but it's in the back of my closet in case I ever need to get it out for a scavenger hunt.
Did you ever get the Zork Mid?
I actually did not get the Zork Mid because I did not buy I bought the game before Zork had Feelies. Feelies didn't show up until the Gray Box edition.
Yeah.
But I do have the Wishbringer Stone.
Oh, excellent.
Okay, yeah, I feel like one of the issues of Status Line or News Zork Times that we covered had the T-shirt. I did just randomly pull up Spring 1983 free heat transfer sheet of the Zork logo, $3.95 value with this coupon and the purchase of any game.
That's
Offer
very
expires April
80s.
15, 1983. Oops.
Yeah, the iron-on transfers for your own. You'd buy your own white T-shirts at your local Sears or wherever, and iron on the transfer. That's a very disco era thing to do.
Of course, I'm wearing my T-shirt. So
Exactly, a quill adventure writing system with the ink pot on the quill itself, the eponymous quill.
in the old gold colours. So
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Excellent.
So yeah, Dave was kind of halfway through talking about some games to potentially play next year. You know, the pace continues of new development. Oh, Dave's back. Did you want to finish telling us?
Yeah, sorry about that. My grocery delivery arrived at the wrong time. I knew it was going to happen. I'd warned Jason, but of course, can't help it.
I was just about to run into an advert for my merchandise, Dave. You've cut me off.
So what I'm looking forward to next year, I want to buy some merchandise, but I don't know what to buy. No, it's not that. I did know, because we covered it on This Week in Retro, I think briefly, the Commodore 64 cartridge-based adventure. So I am going to get that, Robin. I didn't know you were going to on tonight, but I knew for the new C64 I wanted that for it. But there's so many things to get to. I have more ideas of doing things than I actually do of doing them, which I'm sure is not unique to me. But I quite like these, the idea of these. These are written, as I understand it, they're written for an engine that was designed to run Infocom games. And these are now new games written for that, so they maintain the kind of feel of a classic text adventure, but they've got the kind of modern things on it. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to those. I'm not quite sure which system I play them on, whether it's going to be the Amstrad or the PCW or whatever. But yeah, I'm quite looking forward to those.
Is that Airlock and something else you've got there? Because
Airlock
I had the
and
big
the Ruin,
box Tristram
the Ruin
Island.
of Oceanus Prime.
Yes.
And of course, I don't need to tell anyone here, but for anyone who's listening who can't see them, they have copied the classic Infocom style. They're lovely looking things.
Beautiful presentation they are. So I had the Tristram Island big box, and it's wonderful to have all the feelies and pull out the little box of rocks and the secret messages, and it just really adds to that experience of playing an adventure game. You'd forgotten how much it really changes it to have a physical thing to get you into the mood for playing the game and surrounding yourself with that as you're playing.
Oh, yeah. I just realized that Andrew being here can help me maybe answer a question that I don't know the answer to, because in the midst of all of this, you're right. Activision open sourcing, I keep saying I said Activision, Microsoft. Yeah, there is no Activision, so it's on Microsoft. And the Level 9, and then there's a new version of Zilf out, which targets the upgraded virtual machine that, if I've got this right, I mean, Andrew, you primarily led the creation of that, and you can also tell us how it's pronounced, because I I'm not going to even.
Oh no, I mean, I came up with it in the 90s, and it was on Usenet. I assumed nobody would ever say it, so it doesn't have a pronunciation.
Okay, yeah,
I didn't realize we'd ever be
GLULX.
meeting like other IF fans in person.
So you're saying that it's
yes.
correct for me to pronounce it as
Yes, if you find that comfortable.
So
which
now
doesn't
on.
look comfortable at all.
To frame this, so Zilf is a compiler that's designed to use Infocom's original language that outputs to their Z machine, and it's primarily been used by people that are either working on the old Infocom games, in that original language, or a few people that have developed new things using that old code. But now the author has updated it such that it can output to this new higher end virtual machine, which was mostly used by people who were using Inform 7, or now that's just called Inform, blah, blah, blah. So for much bigger games, I guess so my question is, I know you're not directly responsible for this, but what and why?
Well, this is something that Tara promised way back when she was originally working on Zilf, just as it's a language. The two machines were designed to be not compatible on the architecture level, but at the very broad design level, they're the same kind of virtual machine. It's just that mine is larger and can handle larger games. There are some other architectural differences that I won't get into, or we'll be here all day. But basically, code which is designed to build on one should be compilable to the other. It's just that no one had bothered to get around to it because most people interested in ZIL were thinking retro and thinking small.
Right.
I don't know if there's any people who aren't. I don't know if there's any market for people to write really gigantic ZIL games. I don't know that ZIL is really stretchable in that way. I know one thing that I ran into is back when I was working in Inform 6 and I was writing larger and larger games, is the complexity curve of dealing with all the objects in the code curves up, right? You start putting in n squared work as your number of objects increases, just because the platform the design system, the language is not meant to handle infinitely adding complexity and more interactions. This is one of the things that Inform 7 was designed to address, giving you ways, giving you a mental model for dealing with interactions one at a time, or in groups, rather than trying to cram more and more code into a single function, which worked pretty well. And I think that, eventually as you try to make a larger game, the amount of work does increase, but I think Inform 7 gives you more headroom on not forgetting what you're doing and making big snarls of code. So I suspect that since ZIL is a very old system, it will get snarled up if you try to write really large games. And so maybe there isn't as much call for people to use the updated backend with ZIL, but maybe someone will come along and prove that I'm completely wrong. I don't know.
And to date, it's just those experimental conversions of those.
I don't think anyone's actually produced a real game. Someone, the postal said they got Zork 1 more or less compiled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's
as far as we've gotten
on your games. Yeah, and I know I'm oversimplifying, but part of the reason that you needed to create that updated virtual machine was that there were bigger Inform 6 libraries, and then Inform 7, what appears to be, a dozen lines of, more or less, human readable English language code in the background is generating perhaps thousands and thousands of lines of Inform 6 code, right? And so that's why the virtual machine grew so big or needed more headspace. But ZIL,
I was actually a little bit out ahead. I came up with my thing before Graham started on Inform 7, but that was absolutely Inform 7 was the use case for we actually need this rather than it is merely a curiosity.
Yeah, but it is interesting now. So now ZIL can output both to the original Z machine and now to Gilsoft. Dialogue, which is got a little new renewed enthusiasm behind it. It hit the ground running with its own virtual machine as well as Z machine backwards compatibility. So interesting seeing we're getting.
Yeah, I'd like to see actually dialogue. Dialogue is closer to Inform 7 in its underlying design, being rule-based and proposition-based. So I think that the potential for people writing larger games with dialogue is probably a more interesting avenue of approach. But there is as yet no G machine backend for it. Perhaps there will be. I don't know. I'm not I'm not the one to tackle it. But I think that would be more. I think there would be a bigger market, as it were. I say market in terms of hobbyists.
It already targets 2 different virtual machines as it is, right?
Sure,
It does that machine and the all
machine.
machine. Yeah, sure. Yeah, next one's easy. Yeah, but I just mean like there's already a layer somewhere in there in the compiler to have a different output. It's already got a code generation section.
Am I right in remembering that the early Z machines have got like 256 and 512 memory models? Is that right?
The early Z machine, like the first one was 128, and then there was 256, and then there were a couple. Like they forked it a bit more when they were doing like Zork Zero and Journey, because there's graphical stuff in there, so that got more complicated. Yeah. But the basic models are 128, 256, and then modern interpreters do a 512 version.
Yeah. Okay.
That was like the early the early expansion days.
But that comes back to this thing about the retro adventuring and modern interest in retro machines is to scale back to what you can do with the limitations. Yeah. Because of course we've got machines that can do as much as you want. It's writing within those limitations that a lot of people see as the challenge, and also limits how long they've got to spend on it, because there's a top end, isn't there? So I mean, Infocon stuck with their 128 version for 128K version for years and years, and they weren't able. I mean, most of the low end machines couldn't even hit that big. They were limiting themselves to 96K or something just to be able to fit it on whatever it was.
Well, and to go back to what Robin was saying about the Scott Adams format with the 99 messages, though that early Z machine version 3, what was it? It was like 255 objects, right? Because I think there's still those Steve Moretsky notes where you can see where he's trying to cram planetfall. So every room object had to be accounted for, and he just gets it under the line. If you there's the way there's the deeper, more buried limitations as well in those formats. Kind of just
and yet he still had room for the food objects.
I liked the food mechanic. I gotta say,
red blob, the brown blob.
We'll get to that game. I like the eating mechanic of it. I thought that was the right kind of pressure for the game. But
certainly a parallel in the wider retro world, in that the vast majority of development of new retro games, so games for old computers, happens for 8-bit computers and not 16-bit. There's only a fraction happening for 16-bit that is for 8, because I think it's the attraction of working within those limits that are not as tight as maybe a VIC-20 would be, but for a Commodore 64, for a Spectrum, for an Amstrad, there's enough, but not too much.
Yeah, that is interesting, because on the other hand, it is easier to build the kinds of small teams that you needed to do something that was really that would really stand out on 16-bit. So was it the size? Because we also know that all of those 16-bit platforms didn't sell nearly as well as the really successful 8-bit platforms. So is there something to that as well? Yeah, it's hard to say. But yeah, Dave, we were talking about the games that you were looking forward to playing coming up, because the universe keeps expanding. Does anybody else have titles they're hoping to get to in 2026, either truly retro or near retro?
Yeah, I think my disc's loaded with them. I got most of the ones that Dave have got as downloads of Z3. So, and there's a couple of ones that have just been translated from Italian, isn't there? 3 have come out for. Trying to remember what it's just been converted into English. I'm trying to remember who did them, but there's 3 have just come out now that I can't remember for the life of me. So give me 30 seconds and I'll try and remember what it was, what they were called. But I downloaded them the other day. So All That Shimmers, I think, is one of them. So yeah, there's a few of them, and that's a chance to experience something that was maybe written in a different language, now available in English. So my Italian's not that good. Yeah, they were adapted for Punicomp, apparently.
Okay.
So there you go. Okay. So yeah, Andrew Apted. There you go. There's a few on Puny. No, that wasn't the ones. They were the Puny Inform, the Punicomp this year. There were a handful of them I've downloaded yet. There's several of those. So I'm trying to remember what the ones were the translated ones.
So I have a a plan to, at some point, I don't know if I'll be able to get to it in 2026, but I'd like to replay a game that we played on this show.
Okay.
Which was, of course, L, a Mathemagical Adventure. But this time I'd like to play it on my Research Machines Link 480Z that I have just taken delivery of. It's I don't have a display. I don't have a storage medium for it. So right now it's going to be an adventure figuring out what to do with it. But it was pat tested as recently as 2019. So I think the power supply is probably all right.
Yeah, Nick, I think we kind of brushed past it because our Christmas episode was pretty brisk and workmanlike. I don't think we talked too much about where you're working and what you're doing and how it involves getting obscure UK machines to take home with you now.
Well, this actually is separate from that. This came through another channel, but I am hoping to use some of the resources because I've recently begun working part-time at the National Museum of Computing in Bletchley Park. If you go to Bletchley Park, there is this beautiful Bletchley Park Museum on the site where the Codebreakers lived and worked, and it's an incredible site. And off in the corner is a somewhat separate, it's an entirely separate museum with its own tickets and everything, which is the National Museum of Computing, one of many computing museums in Britain. And this one has some amazing resources in it. It has a rebuilt, restored Colossus device, which was used to crack the Lorentz cipher, which was the really difficult cipher that the Nazi high command used to pass, entire pages, documents of plans around. And that's a fascinating thing to play with. Extremely high voltage, open wire, everything. To turn it on, they have an automated variac that sort of brings the voltages up very slowly over the period of half an hour or something. It's an amazing machine. I am not yet certified to operate it, but we also have the other machine that I'm extremely interested in getting trained up for at some point soon is the Harwell Decatron, or the which stands for Wolverhampton. I'm going to be terrible at this now. Wolverhampton Instrument for Teaching Computing from Harwell or something like that. I'm terrible at this now. I don't have the card in front of me. But it is a decimal computer that is run from relays for the CPU. It uses these crazy little whirligig cold cathode devices called decatrons that are decimal storage for RAM. And it has been certified as the oldest currently working original digital computer hardware in the world. So I'm basically just doing classroom teaching there. I get a bunch of kids, year 10s, year 11s down, and I teach them all BBC Basic in a room full of BBCs. It's an amazing thing to do, and I love it. But yes, I do hope to make use of the volunteers and their expertise to get this 480Z up and running sometime soon.
Amazing. Yeah, so take that, Commodore 64 Ultimate.
I'm surprised you didn't leave your C64U wrapped and under the tree. I'm gonna write into the Reddit now and complain.
I have 3 cats, which means I have no Christmas tree.
Well, you did have, but you didn't have one 30 seconds after you put it up.
Yeah, I did have automated turrets to deter when I had one cat. I had automated turrets that fired bursts of air. And that sort of worked, but with 3 cats, it would be impossible.
This is a real thing.
The
tower defensive. But for trees.
It's just spray cans with a sensor, a motion sensor that fires a burst of air and it deters the cats. But I wouldn't try it now. One of them's a kitten and is absolutely unstoppable. The tree would be up for seconds.
Yeah.
I am expecting another one, Tim. Though expecting another FPGA machine. Your project.
Yeah, well, the board is undergoing testing at the moment, so
the expected delay. I mean, everyone expects delays with these things. It's taking it past Christmas, but yeah, the issue 3 is coming, and I really hope the issue 3 lights the blue touch paper on Spectrum Next development. I hope it's the one that gets everything going. I think, in fact, I've just been looking into the unfortunate story of Wonderful Dizzy and the response to that, the nonsense that happened around that. And I wonder if that kicked the air out of the Spectrum Next just a little bit. I don't know. But this time around, more people than ever are getting a Spectrum Next. So that's going to be exciting.
Yeah, hopefully they will, because, I mean, there's still a large number of programs coming out for it every week. You know, so it's they fill a magazine every month with it, you know, with new stuff. So that's still quite impressive, and the fact that you've got a circulation of a magazine that is filled, you know, and it's a significant 50-odd pages, and some of them have even got an adventure column in them. You know, there's 2 to 4 pages of adventure cover every month, or every other month, doesn't it? The next magazine. So written by yours truly, of course. If you're looking for some up-to-date news for the Spectrum Next Adventurist in.
That's Fusion, so I'll need to get that one.
It's the next magazine. It's just from Fusion Retro Pokes. Yeah, that's right.
I get the Fusion. I did get the Amtix one, but I'll need to get the next one now.
Yeah,
and get myself inspired and excited about the next.
Yeah, it is, and but there are people out there doing all sorts. I just grabbed one off Get It today as of a Christmas version of Scholar, which is an anagram game. So I've got through to level 6. I had to stop to come and join the call, so I have to go back to that one. So you know, there's always something coming out, and it's a Christmas theme one with some lovely backdrops and things. So you know, there are loads of things coming out for it. There's always a diversion, and again, it's this retro idea that it's an ideal platform with a good keyboard to play these games on. So the puny ones are all Z3 format. Just put them onto the Z machine on it, and I can play them on a machine that is totally distraction free. I can turn the computer off, I can just turn it on, 30 seconds, be playing. I don't have to turn the PC on. I think that, you know, you're very right, Nick. If you play it on a, I know it's a new vintage machine, but it has that feel. It's playing it on a Spectrum, and you know, it's a different feel to it. And I've got my Heath kit next to me for playing Zork, you know, and that gives a completely unique clank 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 of the disk drive. It's a unique environment, you know. As I said to you before, I've never finished Zork, so I'm working my way through it slowly, just having an odd half hour here and there, just to play it on a machine that it genuinely would have been originally available for, and feels right to play it on rather than just a modern emulation. Although I have got it on the Next as well if I want to.
Although the Next wouldn't still feel like doing it wrong. It would be perfectly normal to do it in the Next. It would
absolutely,
feel right.
Absolutely. You can turn it into a green screen with a white keyboard. It looks exactly like a vintage machine, and it runs a bit quicker as well because you can up the speed quite a bit. So it certainly processes a bit quicker. So it's a nice effect. So
what is the save game situation like playing Infocom games on the Next?
You can snapshot them if you want. It's because they're traditional Spectrum games. But the actual built-in ZXZVM interpreter's got a wonderful save feature within it anyway, which uses a built-in browser. It's very easy and powerful to use. So,
what was the sequel to ZXZVM? What's the one that's? Did someone not do a better version of it, a faster one?
Well, Gary did an updated version for the Next, which is like fully supports the save load and everything. So it's built into the OS. So
because it's why I bought a PCW, because the PCW I have yet to refurbish so I can use it. I bought a PCW because it's got that lovely green monochrome screen, and of course I can use that on it and play Infocom games in isolation.
Yeah, and it is a brilliant machine for text adventure games. We used to sell a lot of copies of Quill for that, you know, because it was popular with a lot of people who were authors. I think we talked about this in the past. You know, in the UK, it was very popular with my friend's mother was an author, you know, and she'd used a PCW for years, long after IBM PCs were common. And it was an ideal machine for those, and that was the sort of thing that appealed to adventurers. You know, it was the same, almost a crossover, I think, with people who had a similar interest. So it was a brilliant little bit of design work from Amstrad, that was, to create that. And like you said, the glowing green phosphor screen is nothing like playing a proper game on that. That's the way to play them. So good choice of machine, Dave. Well done.
I played all my games on a amber yellow Apple II monitor.
Yeah, nice.
So it's not so much the color; it's the terrible swinged Apple II 80 column font.
There's just something so good about going back to those monochrome screens. You can have monochrome on a color screen; it's not quite the same.
No. They're pin sharp. I mean, the Heathkit ones are absolutely unbelievably pin sharp. They're like reading a modern bit of text on a modern machine. It's unbelievably good, really.
So I'm just looking over the games that we've covered so far, and just remarking that we've been at this for almost 2 years now, 2 full calendar years, and it's interesting like what publishers we still haven't touched at all. We still haven't touched any Penguin or Polarware games. We still haven't touched any of the Synapse games, and again, those are the guys that were hitting the market with their system that they called BTZ for Better Than Zork. Feels like we should really be giving that a try. I think those are the two big. We have not had our accountability coach come and make us do more magnetic scrolls after that first unpleasant experience. But Nick, you have not been subjected to a magnetic scrolls game, so maybe you can guide us into the next
I do
one.
have. We were talking earlier about number of verbs. And I was reminded of my friend who is a computer science professor at the University of Minnesota. And together with him, I'd been working on a game for his cybersecurity course because he can't do red team exercises in physical security. So he does it as an Infocom game, right, as a Punion-form game. Sorry, what led into this? We were talking about, yes. And so he has been interested in perhaps playing, the Thieves Guild.
Okay, Guild of Thieves.
Guild of Thieves, right? Because that would be thematic with this physical security infiltration game that he runs with his grad students. So maybe he's interested. He's keen. Maybe we can get him on.
I think that's the one that people have told us to play next, and I just because everybody said that the Pawn would be good too.
I mean, there's a reissue of it, right? Because they did a re-release of it. Oh, is that the old one, or is that the new?
Yeah, that's the original.
That's the Rainbird release. Yeah.
The Pawn was their very first game, and I think what's good about the Pawn is not necessarily the gameplay. It's just the irreverence and the idea of it. And later games I am told are better, but I've not gone back to them, so I wouldn't like to promise that they are good. Just that I think they are.
See, I think Jason and I have this shared sentiment that the amount of irreverence in interactive fiction led us to kind of pine for sincerity now and again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. There really is a weird sincerity gap, and the more of these we play, just give me something where you're I don't know. Yeah, you don't feel like you have to make fun of your format while you're.
It's probably something that we should be apologizing for in Britain, but we had this idea that it was too cool for school to do anything that was serious, and we had to be irreverent and we had to be parody all the time. But I think it appeared it was good and refreshing, and then afterwards it became something you had to do. Tim will have more of an opinion in that than me, I imagine, and more experience than me on it. Help me out here, Tim. Am I floundering here? Is there some truth in it? Were we too irreverent in the UK eventually? Did it become almost a necessity?
Whether I can honestly answer that, I really don't. I don't think so. I mean, it's just the culture, wasn't it? It was just what became the norm.
Did you notice any trends year on year with games out in the market being more or less sincere at any given time?
I think people were exploring all sorts of different ideas, weren't they? So there was definitely there's much more silliness, I suppose you'd call it, that laughing at yourself, which is a sort of cultural norm in the UK, isn't it? To lampoon. You've got this, got that. That was there. They were all there. Hampstead. What was the one with Dennis through the drinking glass? Them were pretty hard cut, weren't they, against social and views? They were definitely ones that were way out. But you had that in the arcade adventures as well with Monty Mole, with the miners' strike. It was all the same. Yes. It was all, everyone had to go with everything, really. So I wouldn't like to say it got completely out of hand, though, would it?
Is this because of Hitchhikers and Monty Python, the cultural influence of that era?
Yeah, I think so. I think Monty Python's got a lot to answer for in the, the Ministry of Silly Walks set off an entire culture of humour, didn't it? But that was present elsewhere as well. You got the I don't know. I'm trying to think. What else would you have? You got Douglas Adams, haven't you? Yeah, you're right. It is those couple of influential authors, isn't it?
Pratchett to some degree. That's far more sincere in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's still the outright humour, the underlying cultural study, isn't it? That's all. But that's why they were so enjoyable, because they worked on multiple levels, didn't they?
I've often thought about the fact that on the graphical adventure side, like the Sierra LucasArts games tended very strongly towards parody.
Yeah.
Whereas when like Myst came in, it was dead serious and somber. And there was a split there, which I've kind of put down to the limited resolution that people had to work with. You had to exaggerate. If you had a little Guybrush Threepwood running around the screen, you had to exaggerate everything and just to make it legible. And making a serious, like, interesting game mechanism like you could put in Myst just wasn't possible in the resolution that they had. So they, like, everything kind of became a satire. This is my theory. I don't have proof. Everything kind of became a satire of itself just because the way that you had to think to design games at that point. Whereas when you had first-person views and extremely detailed rendering worlds, everybody wanted to focus on the world and to think about it and present it like within the world rather than trying to, rely on broad tropes.
And we use the word cartoonish, don't we, to refer to that kind of, over the top, in your face, high contrast style of both art and content.
And Monkey Island, in fact, there's a phrase, there's a word, flanderization, which is the idea that you introduce a character and then the character becomes almost a parody of itself, and an exaggerated parody of itself. And if you look at the Monkey Island games, yes, there were certainly parody and there was some satire in there as well, but it was exaggerated as the series went on. The first Monkey Island games, the first couple, I think the two that everybody likes the most, I think it's fair to say, they weren't. There was a serious tone to those. There was something more than just here's a random event going on. So I think Andrew's right. I think things did eventually go hard in either direction. It was almost a rule. You were doing one or the other.
Yeah, ultra serious or completely and utterly. Yeah, man, that's true of society, though, isn't it? We're all like it's forming apart now. I mean, we can get out of adventures here, but we are coming to having some very opposite views of the way the world was should be. People with very different opinions. So maybe there's those that laugh it off, and those who were quite studious about.
I mean, this is what's brilliant about Terry Pratchett, that he refused to go one way or the other.
Yes.
You had to laugh at it. You had to take it seriously.
Yeah, even when it was sad and almost grim at times,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back on topic, if that's all right.
Sorry.
It's me who took it off. It's me. It was my fault. If we look at the Level 9 and the Magnetic Scrolls games, I'm trying to think, did they do serious ones?
Oh, I would say Level 9 definitely did, because as this has been going on, I was looking at Level 9's output, and all we've done so far, Ben and I just played the first part of Night Orc, and that's a relatively late one, and yes, they do start playing with meta tropes and whatever.
Yes.
But those early Level 9 titles, they are pretty straight ahead. I would not say they get into the kind of levels of self-parody that that the Pawn hit the ground running with, or that the Fergus McNeil Delta Force stuff was doing. They're pretty serious about it.
In my head, Level 9 finished off with things like Night Orc and Gnome Ranger, but they'd started off with the more serious ones.
Yeah, and I think that's accurate. Yeah.
I wonder if there's a period during which a long series of games will be serious because they're developing their engine and they're trying to showcase that, and they'll try and say, look at these amazing things it can do, and they're being earnest and straightforward and trying to show the work they've done. Whereas after a while, you're just having fun with it and playing around with your tools that you've already had. Yeah,
maturity of world modeling.
Something that, man, I don't even remember what episode we brought this up in. I don't know if it was the time that Andrew was on, I'm not sure, but thinking about how companies changed over time, and when Infocom was going to do a funny game, they would tell you this is a comedy game, Nordenbert and so forth. But I've been thinking about the disparity that we talked about, where in 1981 or 2 or 3, something like that, where Mark Blank says, like, well, the technology might get to the point someday when we commission I forget which fantasy artist he was mentioning, a Frank Frazetta or whatever, to do the artwork, and then when they finally did it, they didn't. They got kind of bleh computer art. Have we? Who out there really said when we're going to do graphics and in a parser based format, we're going to do them really, really well. I'm grappling a little bit to think of that, because we got a lot of iffy Apple II graphics, that ended up ported over to a lot of different platforms. We got a lot of the vector drawn stuff for stuff that was memory resonant. But on those 16-bit platforms, when did we get the really, really good stuff? I guess the magnetic scroll stuff does look pretty good. Those ST and Amiga graphics looked pretty good. But I just feel like that potential for, we really could have commissioned some serious artists who really could have made these machines sing. Yeah. Take it away.
I'm going to have to go on extremely fuzzy memory, and may require me to go and play this game. It was tough for me to play.
Welcome to my world. That's what I do all the time.
But I have memories of, I think it was the Wyndham Classics Wizard of Oz game, having really pleasant graphics, like in that sort of, Belle Epoque watercolor style. Sort of arts and crafts style art, sort of like one of the original printed volumes. But that's, I'm going on very hazy memories. And I had trouble playing that, in fact, because my father's hardware key for the FontMaster 128 would interfere with the Commodore 64 mode somehow. I don't know why. The game could never play unless I'd unplugged everything from the machine and completely booted in 64 mode from scratch. So I didn't get to play it as often as I would have liked, but I do remember being impressed by the graphics.
Frederick
I was actually flipping. Oh,
sorry, Andrew.
I was flipping through. I was remembering Jason Dyer did the Dark Crystal high-res adventure game. Yeah. And I remember looking at that. Like, that was crappy Apple II graphics, but they were actually very well done. They were very expressive and got the art style of the original film.
Yeah, I'll agree on that.
And Jason and I found some of the graphics in the Gremlins Adventure International UK version to be quite effective when they were doing things with silhouettes or, taking advantage of some of the artifacts of the graphical style.
Yeah, those are pretty decent.
I was going to say Frederick Prohl's Gateway game.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That's quite a late game. That. I mean, that was at the same time as
my friend's 386.
Yeah, that was when there was graphic adventures out with better graphics on it, but it was. Compared to text adventures from 5 years before it, then yeah.
Okay. Yep, and I've just added Gateway to our list because that was not on it previously.
I've actually contributed something.
Once again, yes.
Yeah.
You haven't mentioned Ultima yet, huh?
Try not to. What's Ultima?
So, Robin, now that you've done the C64 game, are there any other platforms out there that have drawn your interest from a developer standpoint?
I think I prefer sticking to the C64, but I think I'm going to try the VIC-20 next.
Yeah, people
have got one of those.
Well, so pick your spec, because people have been doing some pretty amazing things with the because it's now a lot easier to kind of get the full RAM expansion in that on the VIC and do some pretty impressive things. So are you going to go that route or hardcore 3K RAM? Here we go.
I don't think I could do much in 3K, so it's going to be something like with a penultimate cartridge where I can get access to a lot more memory. So.
Yeah, there's some pretty impressive stuff that gets done. Yeah, when we've got like the 35K build out and some additional storage in that.
Another cartridge game. So it's got a lovely keyboard. So
yeah.
I'm going to have to bow out. I have to go do some shopping before all the stores close for Christmas.
Absolutely.
But it's been good talking to everybody.
Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to meet you, Andrew.
Nice to meet you.
And good night.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so I put I put a link in for everyone here on the one I was trying to think of earlier, which is that Gary Francis has been working on. It's a translation of the Bonaventura de Bello adventures. They were the ones from 35 years ago.
Yeah.
They were the ones I was thinking I needed to grab and download. So Wrath of Anubis, Unknown Dimension, Caribbean Treasure, Wild Western Star, and Desperados.
That's right, because this super prolific developer. And somebody... Dave, was this something that we were looking at? Or maybe, I'm trying to think. No, you know what? I was listening to an old I was listening to an old episode of Floppy Days, and there was an Italian Spectrum enthusiast on, and he was talking about the relative lack of an Italian game industry. But yes, here's this Bonaventura de Bello who did, close to 70 games in a short span. So, the exception that proves the rule, maybe. But
there's something strange about Italian copyright laws. I wonder if that contributed to it. I don't know.
Well, I also was wondering, because they were quilled originally, because they used Unquill to get at them. But of course, there was a completely pirated version of Quill, and it was never sold in Italy because there was a version produced, a pirate version, translated into Italian, produced by a well-known group of distributors in Italian countries. We were advised not to have a chat with them about copyright law. So. There's actually the copy I had of it, which was sent to us, is now in the Leicester Computer Museum. So I think it's been recovered online as well, so you can have a look at it. But it's just basically, it's all translated, everything's done, even the menus and all the verbs and everything. But it is basically just Quill.
I didn't mean to come back to something, Jason. Sure. We covered on the Amstrad CPC episode of Tour a few months ago, two adventures for the CPC that are not text adventures that feel a bit like text adventures with the multiple choices.
Yes, those elaborate choice games. Yes,
with the graphics that are quite well done for it.
Yeah,
I played a couple of them very briefly, but I don't know. Do they fit as text adventures? Has anyone else seen these?
Yeah, did you guys catch those? I'll look up the names while we.
I mean, we've just said goodnight to Andrew Plotkin, who I think would defend choice-based adventures as text adventures. I think that's.
Well, I
he
would
at least defend it as
but
interactive fiction.
I'm not qualified to. I'm just I play the odd game, so it's not up to me to say. But I feel they feel like text adventures to me. They feel that kind of thing. They don't feel like point and click.
Is this Hexapuchu and the Secret of Anubis? Are those the ones we're thinking of?
Yes.
Or is Anubis
Maniac
one
Mansion.
of those?
Maniac Mansion.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. No, these are more like like a Twine game, but with graphics and with a very nice 8-bit interface. They're really worth taking a look at. And yeah, so these are recent developments, right? Because the guy.
Recent-ish, yes.
Yeah.
They're not just in the Amstrad CPC as well. They're available on other platforms. I believe Apple II is one of them. But they just, when I saw them at first, they just caught my attention straight away. There's something about them that was compelling. But very interesting things. They do feel. For me, I played until I got stuck, and it felt like a text adventure. It didn't feel like a point and click. It felt very text adventure-y.
Okay, Eric Kubisel, was that the
You
guy?
are all going to tempt me into pouncing on the CPC in my part of London that I just found.
Yeah, it does look lovely, doesn't it?
I may.
I got my CPC set up in my bedroom, actually. So it used to be my favourite one for playing text adventures on before I had the...
I suspect I'd be able to use the display on my research machine. So
the CPC, the monitor from the CPC is absolutely fantastic.
Is it?
I got the I was going to say modulator. It's not a modulator. It's a receiver, an RF receiver for the add-on for it, and it turns into television.
Yeah,
best television in the house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was.
Because this thing can do TTL and composite and RF.
Oh,
so
yeah, you'll be fine because
I should be fine with that. Okay,
the Amstrad 644 is TTL because we used to buy Amstrads to use the monitors for development, so we had rows of them in the office. So I had a lead done. We had one for my Spectrum 128, one for the Amstrad CPC, obviously, and then one for the BBC. It was the main color BBC monitor because it was such a good monitor. So and you had a free spare 12-volt voltage output off of it as well. To do that, had a little hanging lead to run something else. But they were brilliant. I've still got a couple of them. One of them, unfortunately, has gone faulty, but the other one is I need to find someone because there's a known chip that goes faulty in them, I think. But they are brilliant monitors. They're really, if you get a chance to pick up a CM644, it makes a good retro monitor for multiple machines. Anything with TTL on it, so QL, Spectrum 128, Amstrad, BBC. Simple lead to make for it.
Were there ever any text adventure games that were not on Rails where you couldn't know the outcome, or somebody designed it where you wouldn't know in advance how it could end. I'm not talking about just an alternate ending, but actually not on rails where you kind of knew what the game was laid out.
Well, I mean, I guess where like there's sort of no defined
Ending, yes.
ending. That's something commercial.
Do you mean open world, or do you mean where the ending is not clear from the start?
Yeah, where the ending isn't clear from the start. Maybe there is an ending, maybe there isn't. I'm just curious if there is such a thing.
The closest thing I can think of would be Amnesia, which is a Thomas Dish story with a killer street simulation of Manhattan in there, and no clear way how to survive long enough to get to the ending. But it does have a beginning, middle, and end. It's just very very obscure. But yeah, something that like. Yeah, you'd wonder, like, had somebody experimented with, it's Eliza, but it's also a text adventure, and just kind of keep things rolling. I know now, people are kind of hooking up LLMs to parsers, and you can just sort of, riff forever.
Scott was talking about that last year.
Yeah, but I can't think of somebody like marketing something like that at the time.
Makes me think of MUDs. So I played a lot of MUDs, and it makes me think of those because it's not quite what you're asking, Robin, but if you're in a MUD, then you don't quite have that same linear path towards the end. You can do some things, you can go and do other things, and repeat them every day for months until you break your addiction to them. But yeah.
Minecraft's very much, isn't it? You make it up as you go along, pretty much. People play it together. So, but you need other human actors to make that work. I think it's
or you could end up playing Dwarf Fortress, which seems to have amazing complexity and
please don't mention that.
Emergent storytelling.
But to your question, Robin,
addict in recovery,
like that does feel like something that, if nothing else, somebody in the back pages in a classified ad would have tried to sell at some point, and I'm blanking on what it would be. But if listeners out there, please do drop us a line and point us to it.
So there's two kind of games there that Robin's described. There's the one where you start off and you don't know where it's going to go, but it's got a clear end to it, and the other where it tries to create as many things that you can do as possible while not having an end in sight.
Yeah,
I mean that you have Mind Forever Voyaging is famous for being more about exploring rather than having
right. You don't know where it's going, but it's got a defined end.
It's got a defined ending
of something that's kind of like doing its best to be procedurally generated for as long as it could, which would be entirely possible, with the tools of the time, your Z machine and whatever. You could do that, but did somebody,
we have played mystery games on this show where there was sort of a roll dice at the beginning of the game to determine who done it.
Robots of Dawn with its defective.
Yeah, exactly.
Apple II
where you
generation.
couldn't actually. Yeah.
Is telling you that it's random almost as good as being random.
It's not random when you replay from a save, though, is it?
That was often a problem.
That's the that's the Jonathan Partington trick. Yeah, you've reloaded, so I've regenerated the random information. Yeah. Oh, too bad for you.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dr. Partington, who declined to join us.
Yeah, I think, and we've also talked about, again, talking about Partington's original development environment and everything, part of the fun of text adventures sometimes was just sharing these puzzles with your friends, telling the stories, getting tips, getting clues from each other, and again, maybe sitting in a single large university terminal room or something together. So randomizing might have affected that.
I mean, I'm trying to think of games. I always said that you should be able to have multiple things or routes through a game. You didn't always have to have the same ending, did you? I think that can add replayability for people. I said that in a recent article. I thought that was something that people needed to explore more. So that's pretty much that isn't a win. There's multiple ways of winning. I was trying to think, what was the one that Bandersnatch, was it, that Netflix did, the exploring interactive?
Yes, Bandersnatch.
Yeah, well, that had multiple endings, didn't it? Because then people spent a massive amount of time exploring every possible ending and documenting them. But that's that sort of idea that's filtered through, I think, in games. But I don't know of any text. I've played all doing these 10,000 text adventures, isn't there? There must be one there's got to be. So let's wait to see what people come back with.
Yeah, please do.
I mean, even the Sierra ones, which have a score having a different score at the end is yeah. There's certain things in Sierra games that you don't get full score for. In fact, Wishbringer, you don't get full score if you use the So I guess that's approaching there. But in RPGs, I mean, in what's called CRPGs, classic CRPGs now, you can't make one now without multiple endings and epilogues for different NPCs and all the rest of it. It's necessary now to make a game with all
Politics
that.
engine. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And romance options. Oh, dear. Yeah.
I suppose The Hobbit was a bit random, wasn't it? Things came at different ways every time you played. So it was linear. It was on rail to an extent, but you could still end up with things happening where you couldn't finish it, or because things were happening elsewhere. So it was a very early one that sort of did that idea that you didn't know what you were going to face as you wandered around.
Jason, you did an interview, and I forget who this was, who did the Star Trek game based on like a crisis simulation tabletop game.
Well, we had Ron Martinez on. He did the Promethean Prophecy, but that was a pretty straightforward text adventure.
Right, but I just remember someone talking about like an episode I wasn't on, talking about taking a sort of a crisis management simulation exercise delivered to generals and things, and going, oh, I can put a bridge interactions simulation on that to get a new Star Trek game out of it.
Yeah, that may have been related to some of the other work that he did, because that was and that remains one of these odd latter stage of the commercial era. They created this engine, and almost no games were ever actually created on it. Just very, very interesting how that whole mid to late 80s played out, where these big investments were being made, and sometimes in the case of Synapse they did 4 games and canceled 1 or 2 others, and but others survived.
Swan only ever had 1 game, as we said earlier. There were 3 others in development, but it only ever completed 1. I think Parisian Nights was 3/4 finished. But it's you spend a lot of time on the development of the system, and then you burn out before you can get the games out with it, don't you? So.
Well, rather than ask you guys for New Year's resolutions, how about New Year's prescriptions for the retro adventurers? What do you guys want to see the podcast do in 2026?
I think, as I said before, that it's a miracle that you're able to do a podcast on adventure games, because it's so difficult to get to kick a text adventure about the place until you get right to the core of it, and then produce a podcast on it. So I'm delighted that you're just still able to do it. So many things in retro focus on arcadey style games just because it's so hard to do anything else.
Yeah, there we are. That's what we want, is another year of retro adventurers of the quality that they've been, Jason. Well,
but do Lord of the Rings.
Nick,
but do Lord of the Rings. Very good.
I suppose seriously, play some of them. Maybe some of the neo retro games that are coming out. But have a look. Maybe if we could do some sample ones. Just like you got a tasters. Maybe just rather than a taster and a main, have a bit of a smorgasbord 1 week, maybe or 1 month.
Yeah. I was responding to Route 42 on Mastodon the other day because they were playing Captain Cutter's Adventure, and I said, "Oh, we have an episode about that one," and that was a really fun episode to play.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to dip in on. And then we, speaking of choice games, we did the Z Machine choice-based conversion of the 90s game book Down Among the Dead Men in a very early issue, or episode, whatever we call these things. But it's still on the table. But just then when I look at but we haven't touched this publisher, we haven't touched this publisher. We've barely even done any Infocom games when it really comes down to it. So because there is really just so much, and if you follow like Jason Dyer's blog, more games keep being discovered. Things that people thought were lost. They're like, no, here's these 6 other games, and now BDB Project, we're getting these 69 translated adventures coming our way. Because it's incredible. Even sticking to the sort of the retro period, there's just so much to play.
And there must be ones hidden in other languages. I know I've got 2 here I've promised to recover, which were written with the I think it's the Norwegian version of Quill.
Oh, geez.
So and there's 2 games written with that I think are lost to time. So I've got to recover those. But I only get a couple of shots at playing the tape, so I'm going to make sure I do it right when I do it.
And in the 50 Years of Text Games book, he's got the one chapter on I think it was the Czech protest game from
Yeah.
before all the revolutions.
Yeah, fascinating.
So really, there must be just an untold realms of gaming that just we haven't hit in the English language.
Well, you could always do St. Brides.
Yeah, I got shouted down the first time that I suggested that we start taking a look at St. Bride's game. There was some resistance among my colleagues to go there.
From Smooch's Collier, he resisted. I can't imagine.
From Smooch's Collier, yeah.
It's a unique part of United Kingdom
it's a
culture.
significant part of the industry's history. Yeah,
it has some deep lore. I'll say that.
yeah, definitely. And some of the games are actually quite good. So I would say that mine because I helped convert them from one platform to another. So
there was something my friend Neil, who runs the museum, the cave, the Cotswolds. He and I were looking at. He really likes old catalogues, and it was these printed catalogues of early 90s text adventures for 8-bit systems like the CPC and the Spectrum, no doubt written on the quill. I'm sure. Yeah, well, I don't think they were GAC. I think they were quill. And all you saw was the name of the game, and you sent them a few quid and you got the games. There must be some real treasures there that I know nothing about. And Tim, you might be able to suggest to Jason and the team if there are any text adventures that no one's ever heard of that are actually really good and enjoyable to play, because that might be something that kind of the post-mainstream text adventures on the UK mail order scene, that type of thing.
Well, you've done a few of those, haven't you, from the Zenobi library? So
well, yes, we've taken a look at some behind
closed
doors.
Ones.
Yeah, but no, you're right. There are those catalogs, and yeah, we have a magazine episode that Tim joined us on, where we take a look at one of those early '90s, sort of catalog / zines, and look at what's on offer there. So there were really, really deep inventories.
I think I've just appreciated the variety that you've been doing, Jason. You never know what you're going to get each time you listen to your podcast, and that's wonderful. So keep that up.
It's a quality box of chocolates, Robin.
And as a Johnny Come Lately co-host on this, I have to say I love it as well, because I just get given games ideas out of this massive spreadsheet that we keep. And I don't have to do all of the hunting down of all the all the topics all the time. It's amazing, because I'll just be given a game and I'll go, what is this? What even platform is it on? And I have to go digging for emulators. It's a lot of fun.
And usually the process works, and occasionally it doesn't. My sincere apologies again to Jason Dyer, and that apology episode will be coming out soon, and you'll hear all about it. But most of the time, our processes work well.
Maybe cheat. Maybe just use XOIF for everything. If it's not on that, you don't do it.
XOIF has a lot of good stuff there, but I don't think it's as exhaustive as in some of those other areas, because I think they were focusing on things that were fully commercial and things like that. So that's the thing. There's just so much good stuff out there. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us for this Chatisode. Any final words before we wrap up this session?
Just thank you for doing the show. It's so culturally important to the retro scene.
Absolutely. Thank you all. And it's great to meet other people as well, people you see in the, across the zone. I mean, obviously, Dave, I feel like I know you because I watch you every Saturday morning.
Yeah, that's strange, isn't it? Yeah, the same, because I've never spoken to you before in my life, but I feel as if I'm not a stranger.
Yeah, exactly. So there we go. And obviously for the stuff that Robin does, and just everybody's contribution to the scene, it's brilliant, and it keeps it alive to have this sort of interaction as well. So long may it go on, and I really do enjoy listening to it, and I'm sure everybody who was we should do some little stub adverts to get the message out there. We can plot them into other podcasts to advertise it a little bit.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's kind of fallen out of favor because I hear that a lot on older podcasts from the 2010s, and I think maybe it'd be nice to bring that back.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, thank you guys for the contributions you've made and your participation. Nick, in particular, you certainly don't feel like the Johnny Come Lately. You are definitely part of the core. And Dave, Robin, Tim, really enjoyed having you guys on. Thank you for coming back today, and really hope to have you all three on again in 2026.
Merry Christmas to you, and a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you all. For part 2 of this episode, Jason and I again spoke with Tim Gilberts, along with Iain Lee from episode 18, and Christian Neuhaus from the Sherlock, or as I apparently like to call him, Shakespeare, roundup in episode 23. So top up the mulled wine and break out the shortbread for the heartwarming conclusion of Anno Domini 2025.
And it's our second shift of our 2025 year-end Chatisode here on the Retro Adventurers. We are joined once again by Retro Adventurers co-host Nick Moffat, and
Hello.
Tim Gilberts from Gilsoft has come back from our first session. But joining us for the first time this year, for this Chatisode year, is Christian Neuhaus. Oh, I spoke too soon, though, because we've got a special guest coming in as well. But Christian, how's it going?
Going pretty well, thank you. I've been playing some of the games mentioned on the podcast, so thanks for those recommendations and discussions.
Yeah, so Christian was on our supersized Sherlock episode where we took on 3 different games. And I mentioned that again recently. Brian Rushton, MathBrush, wasn't able to join us this year. He's the super prolific text adventure reviewer. And when I had him on the show, I said, please play the that classic Melbourne House Sherlock, because I would really like to get his perspective on just the madness and Stack Overflow that was that original Sherlock game. Yeah. And joining us as well is past Retro Adventures player Iain Lee from. He's got a lovely backdrop there. He's got a nice.
I've just seen my hair. I'm really sorry. I've just woken up from a doze.
It's a podcast.
Audio only podcast. Just fine.
Well, thank goodness for that. Look, I shouldn't have bothered putting clothes on. I just thought I'd pop in, briefly and say hello and say I've been loving the podcast. I know there was a little breather as you all go off and I think you're living lives, I think is what goes on. And I know Jason has taken over the podcast world by stealth, but I just want to say thank you. I love your pod so much. So it was a delight when it started popping up again after a little breather. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Iain. Yes, our proper television personality, and you've been making pushes to get back to proper broadcast television again. Is that...
To proper, that's what proper telly wants and doesn't have enough of is white, middle-aged, slightly dull, geeky men. There's no outlet for them.
The game show pilots are what have really been getting my attention as a super game show enthusiast to see. So yeah, Iain, it was the pilot of You Don't Know Jack UK edition.
Oh, wow.
Was that
the UK edition of You Don't Know Jack? Yeah, which I thought I've got loads of. I can show you. I've got about 300 VHS tapes of stuff that I used to do back in the day, and I've kept them for whatever reason. I used to be a TV presenter in sort of the late 90s, early 2000s, and I did so many pilots, which is, I'm sure everyone knows, is where you go and make a show and then you take it to a TV company and they go, yeah, here's £1 million, go and make it. And I did so many pilots that never got picked up. And one of them was the You Don't Know Jack, the UK version, because I know it was a thing in the States. I know Pee Wee Herman, can't remember the guy's name. He voiced it in the States because we watched a few episodes. And we did one. And I'm not watching all of this stuff that I'm digitizing. I would go insane. I did watch some of the You Don't Know Jack, and I thought it was funny. I thought it was very funny. And that one didn't get picked up, unfortunately.
Yeah, Paul Rubens, I think the name you're looking for.
Rubens, lovely Paul Rubens, yeah.
Tim, was it you that had the ornament yesterday, the dragon logo ornament?
Yes, yes.
I did think of Iain, yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. I just so specifically, there we are. Iain, I know you're a dragon fan, so the dragon logo.
We need to stick together, brother. We need to stick together.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're few and far between these days.
I remember the things you took. The rivalries was when you're a kid, and I had a dragon when a lot of others had BBC and Spectrum, and so you get bullied for being the only kid. I remember once being bullied mercilessly in a maths lesson because Dragon had been taken over by a Spanish company, and so the two BBC kids just ripped into me for an hour. Because it had been taken over by a Spanish company. And when I was 10 or 11, I was crushed.
I hope we got them back because Investronica did the 128K Spectrum. So it was a Spanish company that bailed Sinclair out towards the end. So
I'm going to find them on Facebook straight after this.
Tell them.
My podcast friend told me that I need to resolve this issue with you.
Yeah. Well, I bought a ZX81 first. then a Spectrum, and then a Dragon, I think. So it was in that order. So I certainly, I'm a big fan of both for obvious reasons.
That's a gauntlet of pain. What was that list, that sequence again?
ZX81, which I built from a kit.
Well, sure.
A Spectrum, and then a Dragon, because it had a proper keyboard and we could use it for Secocia uppercase printer for printing things. So, I think I obviously had some text adventures on it and had a better keyboard, didn't it?
Yeah, a couple of those.
Yeah, and Nick is trying to earn his national bona fides now. You've got that CPC, where it's a day later now, the CPC 464.
So just for Ian, and for Christian as well, who didn't see this before, I recently picked up this Research Machines Link 480Z, which I had mentioned before on the podcast in the episode on L, A Mathemagical Adventure, because, of course, that was released for the school machines, BBC Micro and the 480Z, which I hadn't heard of until I did that episode. And then on the strength of recommendations from Tim and from Velociraptor Dave after the show last night, I just reached out and found out that this amazing deal on an Amstrad CPC 464 setup is it's still there for me if I can pounce at just the right moment. So I hope to figure out where on the pecking order that will leave me in Ian's school.
I think anybody. I lost out at big time as well in the Betamax VHS wars. I was a beta guy. I backed the wrong horse every single time in my life. So
were you taking the take on Laserdisc or? CDI?
I didn't get Laserdisc. This is when I finally got back into gaming, and it was PlayStation versus Sega Saturn. I put in so much work, and the fact that I was leaning towards Sega Saturn made me think, right, probably go PlayStation. If that's your initial instinct, is don't go with it.
Double think.
Betamax is better quality. What can I say?
Oh, see, you could have become like a market oracle, right? People could have come and asked you for stock tips and then bet against you.
Bet against me. I've backed a lot of wrong horses in my time, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't had any neon green games since I think we went into Dragonland. No, we did play another one from that same publisher. Ben and I did recently, but I think I played the DOS version again and spared myself. But we need to start getting back to some of those hideous platform presentations. None of this comfortable DOS
all
prompts.
In basic, lovely slow responses.
So Christian, when you were on before, I think it was right around when You've Ruined a Perfectly Good Mystery was going up in New Zealand.
Yes, that was. You don't remember exactly, but I was around that time.
Yeah, and then I know you've got another submission in as well.
I did, yes. I did. I was able to go see it myself in person. It's a lot of theater is about the personal connections. So my co-writer lives in New Zealand, moving to Auckland, but at the time he lived in Wellington. So he knew someone there, and it was produced there for a 3-week run, sort of international cast, which I guess is kind of not unusual for New Zealand. You got people from all over coming to live there. So he had Canadians and Americans and native New Zealanders in the cast. I was really happy with what they did with it. Smaller theater, but it's actually works well for a smaller space. So I was happy to have made first time visiting there, and it's happy to see the production. They're happy with what they did with it.
And that is your interactive stage adaptation, tongue-in-cheek of the Sherlock Holmes mystery format, right?
It is indeed. Yeah, there's a narrator who will periodically solicit choices from the audience about what path the characters go down, and they'll best by applause. That's what the characters will do. So you have to. Yeah, I haven't. It's an interesting acting challenge, I would imagine, but you have to memorize different scenes that might not get performed. So, but that's kind of how it goes. It is you have branching paths, so it's not. It's not completely. Some scenes are identical regardless of what choice you have, but yeah, there are branching paths that will change the direction of the story or the adventure.
That's a fantastic idea. Choose your own adventure play. I bet the audiences love that, don't they? That would be incredible to be part of that.
Yeah, very good reaction. So
do you have to buy 5 tickets so you can see every night and see, because it'll be different each night?
All 5 endings.
Well, technically you could. So.
Are you allowed to kind of pause the play, and if the next decision gets you killed, you can go back a bit and go down, putting your fingers in between the pages?
Yeah, just ask all the actors to put their fingers in the script, and then.
Yeah. Well, I actually did write a screenplay that counter for that. Like Sherlock Holmes actually murdered, and Watson objected and said, "Well, I'm sorry, a premature death is a risk in any choose your own adventure tale." But
no refunds.
Yeah, but no, they brought him back. So.
Yeah, I led a reading of the very, very first Choose Your Own Adventure book called Consider the Consequences, which is from, about 1930 or so. And yeah, I gave the audience like one redo because, right, you can get those pretty early. It wasn't a death-based one because these were very, they were kind of realistic life drama type of circumstances, but they were definitely ones that had shorter and more boring timeouts. But yeah, there's room to bring those concepts live. And we were talking on the previous session too about like a little bit about choice games, and are they real adventures and so on and so forth. But Christian, you being engaged in stuff like You've Earned a Perfectly Good Mystery, have you guys ever talked about doing a Twine edition, as a teaser or anything like that?
Not exactly. No, my co-writer Rick Stem, he actually works in gaming, and that he does. I don't know if he's done something specifically like that, but yeah, interactivity is part a lot of what he's interested in. But as far as Twine specifically, no, I think that. But yeah, it's something I'm interested in. Even just generally, like being able to create, like something like what you've done, Jason, with Ghost King, which I have played, I enjoyed. I got stuck in a couple of places, so I had to look at the code.
It wouldn't be a Scott Adams style adventure if you weren't sitting there going, I have no idea how do I avoid dying when I leave this room? I don't know.
Well, I think both of the obstacles I encountered were related to Ophelia. Yeah. But when I saw those solutions, I was like, oh, well done. I wish I would have came and figured that out on my own, because they're good solutions. So I won't say more than that. But yeah, it's very clever.
I had a big idea, and it turned out that there was just kind of no time or energy to do it. But when we produced Henry V here recently, back in the spring, I had this idea, like as a promotional tie-in, do like a choice-based game where you are the king of France. Can you successfully, maintain enough face at home and not provoke Henry to invade and and slaughter everybody? But it didn't get much past like, well, okay, and you do this, and you tell the Dauphin that, and would there be a victory condition? Yeah, maybe one, but it'd be tough to get to. And I'm like, that sounds like a lot of work, and I don't actually know.
See, now I'm waiting for you, Jason. You need to produce the world's first parser theater experience.
Oh God.
Well, that does relate to something I wanted to mention, because I do this is a game that I want to spread the word about. It's not text based, but it is a very specialized target audience. So I want to make sure that people who are listening out, it's called Parsley, Parsely.
Yes.
I mentioned this to you, Jason. Have you heard of it? Yeah, it's a tabletop role playing game, but it's simulating the experience of playing a text adventure. So you don't have a dungeon master, you have a parser, and then you can have as many players as you want, but then you control one character in the game. And so on their turn, they'll give a standard, like a regular, text game style command.
Okay, yes, this is Parsley, an adventure party game.
It's like a one-sheet adventure mostly.
Got it.
And it's fun because it came out shortly after Steve Jackson had put out Munchkin, which played a little bit on the tropes not only of Dungeons and Dragons but of Dungeons and Dragons players. And so in Munchkin, you were encouraged to min-max and argue the rules and that kind of thing. And in Parsley, it is encouraged for the parser to be extremely persnickety about your choice of words in ways that just it's designed to keep the laughter rolling.
Okay, interesting.
Only time I ever DM'd for my son and his friends, I don't think they actually they never got all the way along the path to the entrance of the castle. They developed a great big dungeon, but they drunk so much by the time they got the end of the path trying to explore everything, they didn't actually achieve anything much.
Okay. Yeah, I just found found the landing page, memento-mori.com. Okay, yeah, and there's Action Castle 4, which is very clearly Zork imagery. So, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely somebody to talk to.
Perhaps one for a meetup sometime. If you ever come over to this island, join the other hosts.
Very cool. So for Christian and Iain in particular, we talked a little bit yesterday about just some of the things that have been happening in text adventures this year. We saw Microsoft finally kind of acknowledge, okay, our games are open source, so maybe we'll officially say that at least the Zork games are as well. Level 9 did as well. The fact is, like, the volume of these games keeps increasing. Not only new development, but there are people out there discovering these lost archives. Somebody's in the process of porting 69 games that were written by an Italian, like in Italian. They're being ported and translated to English. So from the 1980s. So there's still so much more to find. Anything that kind of jumped out as if you didn't get to it this year, you're interested in taking a look in 2026?
I don't think I'm going to go back to text adventuring as more than just popping my head in and having a little. In terms of having a go, you know, I love listening to the podcasts, and but in terms of sitting down and going, right, I'm going to text adventure tonight, I kind of like 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then I'm done, and that's enough for me. What I am amazed at is every time you do a show, the amount of news that you have, everything you've just said there, the amount of news you have, the stuff that is going on in the world of text adventures, you know, because it's a niche of a niche. But there is, as with a lot of these things, there is such a passionate, intense community that wants to keep providing, translating 69 Italian games. I mean, I can't imagine they're going to get many plays. I could be wrong. You know, there could be thousands of people listening to the, you know, shaking their fists at me. But how wonderful that people are doing that. I'm assuming it's not just one person doing all that. Maybe it is. How wonderful, though, that someone has seen, right, well, these games aren't in English. Let's do that and put them out there for anybody that wants them. And that, for me, is kind of the true definition of a community. No one's getting rich off this. People are doing it because they love doing it and because they love sharing stuff with other people. That, to me, is magic.
Totally. Absolutely. And it is a couple of people, Gary Francis and a few others have been working on it. So, but it's just the amount of effort they've put into recover the original code and then try and work out and translate the vocabulary properly. And it's a lot of work. It's more work than we might think, isn't it, from one language to another? Because you've got also, I mean, well, we all done it, haven't you? You can't, doesn't work. I was remember in Spain, I said, oh, meter el pato or whatever. I'll put my foot in it. Well, you don't do that because that's a duck.
Well, translation of like, you know, I always think when books are translated, literature is translated from one language to another, you should have the translator's name on the front of the book as well, because it's not a word for word. Yeah. It's getting that feeling and that emotion and the nuance and the subtlety across. So yeah, doing that in a game is wild. Well done them. And I'm sure they're having an absolute blast doing it with all of the frustrations, and bits, you know, banging their head against a brick wall at times. I'm sure they're loving it. And how wonderful when they're done, they can sit back and go, look what we've made. Look what we have released out to the community.
And they've done 6 already, which is quite impressive going, really. So, I always remember being the only person in the theatre, apart from my friend who was an English teacher when I lived in Spain, went to see Batman in Spanish. And there's a line, I think, with the Penguin says, I've always wanted to say, people always say I've got bats in my belfry. And we're the only 2 people who laughed. Because, of course, it's not anything that works in Spanish. So everyone's looking at us going, what's that going on here?
And then Christian, coming back, we talked about Ruined. You have another play that's in development or being shopped around?
Not exactly, but I do have a production. There's this company here, southeastern Wisconsin. They do an annual comedy festival of short plays. It's sort of a competition. The audience will pick one, and I wrote a play that was selected for that.
And was that one that we've seen here in a Lucid Dreaming and Are We Delicious?
Yes, it was a Lucid Dreaming sketch.
The Madison narrowcasting, at least. Tell me, and then tell everybody else what the setup is.
Okay, it is kind of a connection to the era of your games. Yeah, it's basically playing on the 80s trope of the mismatched buddy cop comedy. So I have a loose cannon cop, McSteel, whose partner is Buttons, who is a literal clown who only communicates by honking a horn. So it's basically these kind of cliche 80s cop movie situations, but with a clown who communicate. And of course nobody acknowledges that he's a clown honking, or they just react to him the way they would like the rookie cop who's by the book. So.
And then Iain, have you started any new podcasts this week?
Have I started any new? I have a top secret project going on that is top secret. I shouldn't even say that because I'm tempting fate. No, but I have kind of just started. I do podcasts because I like things to be very instant. I'll have an idea and I go, I'm going to do it and make it and put it out now, which is what we can do these days, which is great. And then quite often I get bored week 3, month 3. At some point it will just stop being fun, and I'll stop doing it. And my latest one is. So I used to be a phone-in host, and it wasn't like political news phone-ins. It was always very, very silly. One show we played hide and seek with the listeners. They would phone in from their house, and we had to guess where they were, and I would hide. Anyway, so that's the kind of nonsense. But I have kind of created this character who unfortunately shares the same name as me, hosting a phone-in show on TikTok. But it's Derek and Clive meets Five Live. I don't want to be there. I hate everybody that's calling in. Why are you wasting my time? And it is a foul-mouthed rant that I think is going to get me banned from TikTok, actually, but I'm having fun.
As I said, there's very few Derek and Clive bits I feel like you can pull off on the public internet these days. But
you could say very much anyway. But so that is my latest thing. I will go back at some point and did a gaming podcast, Random Access Memories. I will go back to that at some point. I'll wake up and go, right, I need to record another 12. But that's the beauty of podcasting. I've got a microphone, I've got a camera, I've got a mixer. As I can see, you all have. We can make stuff and put it out. And, you know, for me, I spent years chasing numbers. It was viewing figures or listening figures. And now I'm 52. I don't really care. I don't care if one person likes it or if 1,000 people like it. As long as I'm getting pleasure, I guess it ties in with the people translating the Italian games. If I'm getting pleasure out of doing it, that's great. If anyone else wants to come along with the ride, you're very welcome. But actually, I'm kind of doing it for me.
Well, that's the nature, isn't it, of podcast and YouTube. The whole principle was to let everybody be a creator. And that's I just watched a couple of YouTube circular ones with the Maker's Secret Santa, where they'll have a challenge to drive things to other people, where they make each other gifts and send them and receive a gift from someone else, which is back to the old circular chain. I think it's great. It gives you an exposure to some things you'd never think about. And coming back to your thing about Ian, you like to spend 10 or 20 minutes on a game. I'm the same with adventure game, with not only with adventure games, but with arcade games. With an adventure, I will do an hour or two. I still can do that. But with like arcade games, I just want to go on, spend 15 minutes, be entertained, and then stop. Or a puzzle, I like to do it for half an hour, 45 minutes. So, and talking about what you were saying, Chris, about these sort of more sketch productions, maybe there's a case for like pocket adventures where they can be solved in you should be able to do them in half an hour.
Waiting for the bus.
And actually 10 of those, rather than, having one big sprawling thing. You can then use the old sketch idea, can't you, where there's something really intense for a brief moment, and then you move on to something totally different.
And I like that game. I got two boys who are nearly 14 and 16, and we went to one of those retro arcades on Saturday. We're at Pixel Bunker in Milton Keynes, where you pay 15 quid and you're there for 3 hours. And I'm always worried when I take my kids, we'll be there for 20 minutes and they'll be looking at their watches. But we stayed for 2.5 hours, and they absolutely destroyed me at Pac-Man. Pac-Man was the game I was good at. We spent so long playing Sega Rally, and it was this wonderful thing of we sat and played a game for 10 minutes, 20 minutes of Sega Rally. Then we went and did, and I'm wandering around and seeing one of my boys is playing Donkey Kong, another one. I feel slightly embarrassed coming in and saying, well, I don't really play adventure games that much in this crew, but I get a lot of my pleasure living through your stories and your reviews. I get more pleasure listening to you lot talking about it than I think I would sat there for 3 hours on a Sunday evening.
Well, Ian, speaking of retro gaming in Milton Keynes, I've begun working part-time at the National Museum of Computing in Bletchley Park.
So I hear, yes.
So we have a series of microcomputers from the 80s and 90s dotted around this space. And very often after a tour with the school group, year 10s, year 11s, they'll get some time to play, just free time on these machines. And it's amazing to watch them because we have two machines in particular next to each other. One is a sort of early 90s PC, a Packard Bell, I think, running Doom under DOS. And, rather violent game, as we all thought at the time, sitting next to an original 1970s Pong machine. And you will see some kid intently yet quietly, calmly playing Doom next to two regular John McEnroes going at it at the Pong machine. So I tell you what, it's tennis what rots the youth.
Ban this sick filth.
Ban this sick filth. Absolutely.
Listen, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to go because I have I've I'll say it, I had my cleaner coming around. I feel, well, I'm so middle class embarrassment at that.
Batman's coming tomorrow. Don't worry about it.
I just really wanted to pop in and say, thank you so much for what you do. I know that getting a group of people together to record your podcast can be difficult if you're all over the world and you've got jobs and families and stuff like that. But keep at it. I love it, and I'm sure there are loads and loads of other people that love it. And it really is it's a highlight when it pops up in my feed that a new episode has dropped. So I just wanted to say thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Keep doing it, please.
Yep, and selfishly bring back random access memories.
I need to. Yes. I didn't get you on, did I, Jason? I need to get you
sir,
on.
That's why I say selfishly.
When I do, you'll be the first one to get an email. I promise. Have a lovely holiday, and hopefully speak next year.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Happy New Year.
See you later on. Bye bye.
That's enough. I wanted to bring up, I was hoping to run this by Iain as well, because he was part of the discourse around Board of the Rings we covered that he was on. But Christian, I do want to put it to you, because we have talked on the show a lot about, kind of like games being caught up in their own sense of humor, or games kind of being dominated by their whole publishers, the Delta 4 and whatever. And Andrew Plotkin, I'd never connected the dots like this before, but he kind of just casually mentioned, it's like, we were talking about how Sierra and LucasArts kind of really came to be defined by their very jokey style. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, and then Myst came along, and it was, stone cold sober, and kind of the implication being, and sold a squillion copies. So, do you have any thoughts to add on that? The idea that maybe there were people that were really hungering for, I put up a Don Draper meme, there need to be games for people who don't have a sense of humor, that people say like, okay, good. I don't have to sit here and have you make fun of me, or I don't have to care about puns. I can just think about how does this stone trap work, or, whatever.
That's interesting. I don't know if I have much to add. I think that part of the appeal for me of these games is sort of the intellectual puzzles and challenges. So I think that, but that is interesting how that's those sort of things sort of became tied together. That style of humor and also text adventures, even though they're really not. They don't have to be tied together. But that's kind of how the games that became famous use that style. But I think that there is the puzzle solving aspect of it is something that. You could sort of appeal for it. The appeal of that part of it is something that may take precedence over the style. So I think that like a good puzzle well told. I think that maybe that's what people wanted to experience, and because humor is subjective, so maybe I can see why that would make people take people out of it.
And cultural humor, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So, Christian, I remember in the Shakespeare episode, you were talking a lot about how the portrayal of Lestrade is often a very, it's used for comic effect, right? Mm-hmm. A little bit too much. I don't know. What do you think in general of Shakespeare? Of Sherlock works making their way through, using Lestrade for comic effect to try and offset the seriousness of the mysteries.
Yeah. Well, that does remind me, backing up a little, the situation with Microsoft and Zork, that did sort of remind me a little of what happened with Sherlock Holmes, where it's something where people sort of, before the court case came out that this is a public domain character, people sort of treated it that way anyway. So the fact that Microsoft is finally acknowledging that yes, you play Zork, that kind of reminded me of that situation. Yeah. But Lestrade is comic relief. I think it might be something to make it more, the story's more accessible, I guess, since because they are. I remember getting into them when I was younger. I think that most people do get into them when they're younger, and the style can be little off-putting. I remember having to look up a lot of words, so I think that having a comic relief character does make them a little more accessible. But then it does sort of feed on itself a little, maybe, where you sort of expect that like I think the Nigel Bruce's portrayal, I think that might have colored people's perception of Watson, even though it didn't really match the story. So I think it's a kind of a combination of just making them more accessible and just having some levity in any story. I think that's often beneficial. But then it just sort of became its own thing.
Yeah, you need to escape from reality, don't you? Reality is quite grim at times. So when you do something, whether it's play a game or watch a film or a play, you do want a little bit of something to take you away, don't you? You don't want it to be all grim. You want some optimism there.
Well, and going back to the humor thing for a second, the other part of the Don Draper quote that I'm invoking is, as he's dressing down Paul over being too reliant on puns, he also says, "Stop writing for other writers." Think about how these games are developed. You've got your cadre of fairly like-minded fellows, and it's mostly fellows, and you're like, "Hey, is this funny? That's amazing. That's so funny. All right, great. Let's ship it." And it had its audience, it had its adherents, but I think maybe something like Myst is like, but what if we didn't have to do it that way?
What if we made MIT engineering puzzles that could be solved by the average 9-year-old visually? Thus, Myst was born.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that observation because, that's something I hadn't thought about. I think you mentioned that before, like MIT and the California.
Yeah, those cultural differences too. Yeah.
Yeah, when you spelled it out like that. Oh yeah, okay, I can see it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
although I think Myst was Oregon or Seattle area. It was somewhere else originally. Those two.
Yeah, they're Pacific Northwest guys.
Pacific Northwest. Yeah, and they were very much aiming for the sort of family audience. Really had a coherent vision for what they wanted, and
Yeah, I imagine the fewer jokes folks it was fairly low on their list of like what made it special and different, but it was something I'd never really thought of in that sense before, and I was just intrigued by it. So Tim, you had mentioned another. Looks like that's a Gary Francis game.
It is, yeah. Igor's Quest. Yeah, it was one of his treasure hunt jam, and it's a very minimal game because you're only allowed to have, I think you can only use a couple of words, so everything's done in 2 words, even the description. So Igor go east, west, up, and that's it. Igor C, closed door, wooden table. So and it's just living rooms for everyone. It's very simple, and it's all about puns on it because he's got to collect all the parts for to rebuild the body, obviously with the lightning coming, and of course you've got to go and find them. So I suppose it's not going to be too difficult for people to realise if you walk past a field of corn that you may be able to get something that you need for the body from it. So we won't give you the answer, but it's the sort of thinking that's there immediately. As you say, Gary's got some really clever stuff. It'd be someone worth getting on the podcast at some point, I think. So
I think I already have a solution to that puzzle.
Yeah, good. Do you? Okay,
I'm on it.
You're listening. You're listening, are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a few more in there, and some of them are a bit more subtle. Yeah, it's well worth playing, and because it's only 2 words, it literally is quite quick to play in that respect, as long as you're quite good at puns. But it's challenging as well. It's very clever, very clever.
It's a pity Iain is left, although I hope he does listen to this afterward. And in that case, Iain, if you're listening, I will recommend to you, if you want a really short game, probably the shortest game we've played, aside from maybe the 10-line adventure, would be Behind Closed Doors.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to get back to some of those at some point. Yeah, the other thing that came to mind when talking about the short games, I mean, a lot of current games that are usually organized around some competition or theme, like in theory, they say like your game should be completable in 2 hours or often less. I'm not sure how true that holds for all of them, particularly the parser ones. But it's very easy with modern tools now to stand up a little bit of a game. Like there are mapping tools out there, so even if you have no particular skill with creating a map, you can wire up a few things and then output directly from it code that's ready to drop into multiple development languages, both the kind of neo-retro ones and contemporary ones. And I do get these ideas for like, well, tangibly, I've been wanting to do another Scott Adams literary adventure diversion in the style of my Ghost King Hamlet for the play Women Beware Women. Oh. I just gets a little sidetracked at the puzzle stage and whatever. But it would be easy enough to kind of set up. Here's a few rooms. Here's what navigating them around looks like. Adapting one of these works. And is that something that would be interesting? Checked into GitHub if people do want to pick it up and run with it. And that not to take your IP, Christian, but to take something like the framework of Ruined and start a game game around that, or start a Women Beware Women game, or a Blue Comet game. You're in the library, you're in the drawing room. Here comes Christopher with all of his luggage. I don't know. Would that be interesting to check those frameworks in, and then people want to run with them, or push in additional material they can.
Write your adventure as you go along.
Yeah. Or just kind of have those stubs out there, those sort of seeds for people if they wanted to pick it up, they could. Just a thought.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Certainly for a beginner, I think, because it's very often with a blank sheet of paper, it's where do I start? Whereas if you've got a, once you've got your first 2 rooms down and a couple of objects, you're away, aren't you?
Yeah, I have a tutorial for Punion form that I started on. I got about a couple chapters in, which I think people have found very helpful, because I originally in the 90s bounced off of the Informed Designer's Manual and even the other book document that was out at the time, which was more trying to be more of a tutorial and was having you do this sort of, ancient Aztec ruins sort of scenario. And I just hit this barrier of I never really understood what was in the file that I was putting out. And I would have understood it had I progressed further, but I have a hardcover copy of the design manual, the DM4 design manual edition, 4th edition for Inform 6. It's a massive thick book, and it opens with exactly the sort of stuff you would expect from a language designer engineer's manual. Yeah. Here's what integers are. Here's what floating point numbers are. Here's a if then else. Okay, it's all stuff that I've done scripting and programming in plenty of other languages. I'm not worried about that. I just need to know what is the essential to start a game. And so from my tutorial, I started with you appear. It's this sort of the book takes this sort of quantum leap approach that playing a text adventure is like leaping back in time into another person. You don't know where you're going to be when you wake up. There you are. You have to deal with the situation as it's presented. And I gave these very short half-page to one-page examples of, you have to go back and pull the source code transcript off of the teletype in Crowther's office, right? The game for Advent. Or you now have to be Don Woods and you have to download that to make your new one. And every step of the way, things would get a little bit more complex and show a few more features. But you're always starting with this, like, here's a half a page, here's like 20 lines of code. It's a complete game. Load it in, play it, start adding things from there. And I think that helped me to just conceptualize how to explain to other people how to write Punion form. And I should probably finish that book someday.
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be interested. But because we get listening to you talk about you and the podcast talk about the technical aspect of it. Yeah, that's a skill I'm interested in learning. So yeah, I would absolutely be interested in a tutorial like that.
You are Don Woods.
Yeah. I think it was
sending an email to everyone on the internet.
Yes, everyone on the ARPANET.
ARPANET, yes.
Yes, the story was that at the time, the ARPANET had a maximum of 256 possible nodes, possibly fewer. There was probably still a broadcast address or something. And so he was able to just go, I don't know, Crowther at machine 1, Crowther at machine 2, and he just wrote a script to mail all of them saying, hey, I found this game. Is it all right if I add some dwarves and things to it? And that was basically how that game got started.
And the first spams.
Yes. Well,
it wasn't commercial, so it didn't fall. It didn't fall. Yeah. But,
it worked, and we're blessed. So.
Yeah, and Ian, we mentioned the our little hiatus as we had episodes sitting waiting to go, but hadn't been pushing them out. But we'll be working better in 2026 to keep the steady flow. I hope that Tim and Christian will continue to join us. Nick and I will keep editing and advancing things towards being released on some sort of regular schedule. So, Tim and Christian don't have to answer now, but if there are particular topics, genres, whatever that you'd be interested in coming back and playing with us, we'd definitely be looking forward to hearing those and getting you on in 2026.
Yeah. Perhaps looking at some of the different systems, because we've got one in a can about a system, but we don't really talk about it a little bit. So maybe look at some of the others as well, because there's I saw a meme somewhere. There's almost as many adventure writing systems that there are people writing adventures, which is slightly more than the number of people playing them.
And then Christian, we don't want to necessarily make you have to be the mystery guy, but if there's another genre.
I'll have a look, because I think there are. I am. experience is kind of limited just from from Commodore 64. So I am appreciating learning out the broader world. So yeah, I'll see if everything catches my eye for sure.
Yeah, no bullying over our computer choices for the C64 guys. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say you're in a room. You got three Commodore 64/128 guys and one Dragon guy. So
I'll do a Spectrum as well. So
fair enough.
Yeah, and I did like the C64, but for arcade games, I have to be honest, I never played a text adventure on it. So it's an admission, isn't it? So that's not true. I had suspended for the Commodore 64 because it was the only way I could get it. Because of course I had a disk drive for the Commodore 64.
Okay. So you did have a 1541 drive then.
I did, yeah, and I played suspended on it, and that was my first chance to play an Infocom game. Okay. And until obviously I got the 6128, and then you could do them all on CPM. So but that was a lot later. So,
and that's a tough starting point because that is a rough game.
Yeah. It's really funny. I think I had all these games on the Commodore 128 at home as a kid. And then I went to university and someone had thrown away a C64. And I picked up that C64 and took some games from home to play on it in my dorm room. And that was where I first beat Planetfall, was on that 64. And I felt like, I should have done this on the old machine back in the day.
Yeah.
Interesting, the winding paths.
Well, imagine the C64 and his disk drive, mind. You got plenty of time to think about your next move while it's loading something.
Although there are some fixes you can apply to help with that. Again, as a Commodore 128, we had the 1571, which I believe didn't have the same errors in the way it connected somehow.
You could master the discs or format the discs such that they would be faster, but it was not. It wasn't like you could just drop a regular C64 disc in it and enjoy the benefits. That was not a thing. But yeah, for sure. Well, I am grateful that your paths to holiday bliss brought you to our Chatisode. For Tim and Christian, thanks so much for joining us today. Nick, thanks for coming back as well. And this has been our 2025 year-end Chatisode. Anybody with any final wishes for the audience before we sign off?
Great adventures in 2026. Right. Yeah.
And come visit the National Museum of Computing in Bletchley Park. It's different from the Bletchley Park Museum.
It is, yes.
And
well worth visiting both.
It's on the same site, but it's separate ticket.
Yeah.
The theater that's got your buttons?
Over Our Head Players in Racine, Wisconsin.
And that's January?
February, March.
February, March. All right, you get time to get your tickets. So I have been Jason. Thanks for listening to The Retro Adventurers.
You've been listening to The Retro Adventurers, a podcast about classic text adventure games. This episode was produced and edited by Jason Compton. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, including Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Podcast Addict. Visit us at retroadventurers.com and follow us on Facebook and Blue Sky. The Retro Adventurers is based on a format originally devised by Ben Collier, Jason Compton, and Dave Hawkins.